We know that at some point in the history of the late Roman Empire, the ancient art form of creating statues or busts depicting emperors was given up. For hundreds, nay, for over 1,000 years, first the Greeks and after them the Romans had created some incredible and beautiful statues or busts, reaching an artistic peak, in my opinion, in the case of the Romans, in the 2nd century AD, where we find some of the most extraordinarily detailed ones. But as the centuries went by, we witness the finesse and detail of the statues decline, a phenomenon about which I talked in this video here. But now we want to take a look at some of the last statues of late antiquity, the last statues or busts that were ever created in the Roman Empire. Where would we find them? And how did they look? And most importantly, when would we see the last ever produced statues of the Roman Empire? And why did they stop making them? Let's start with some of the best preserved latest ones, because from many other statues from the 500s AD, we just have fragments left. But this statue here, found in Aphrodisias, depicts Flavius Palmatus, the governor of the city. I have mentioned Aphrodisias in previous videos a few times, since that city was one of the last strongholds of paganism, and there was a sizable pagan community there, even as late as the 500s AD. And we know that stonemasonry or artisanship was very strongly linked to paganism. And so it is not too surprising that we find this very well preserved statue in Aphrodisias. And yet, we can see that this craftsmanship, even though very likely from a pagan artisan, could not reach even remotely the fidelity and degree of detail from the statues of the 1st or 2nd centuries AD. Yet still, as we shall see, this statue is still a lot better looking than other statues or busts from a similar time. Such as, for example, this fragment here of a statue showing the head of a man dated anywhere from as early as the mid-4th to as late as the late 6th century AD, and it was found in Constantinople. Dating these statues is, as you might have guessed, sometimes very difficult. And we can also see that the finesse of that head here is not on the same level as the one from Aphrodisias. But before we continue with the next statues, I would like to take a moment to thank the sponsor of this video, Incogni. What would you say if I told you that there are people selling your private data, your full name, your email, employment history, even your phone number and home address on the internet right now as we speak? According to the Identity Theft Resource Center, data breaches have gone up significantly in the last years, and there are hundreds of data brokers who make a profit by selling your private information to third parties. As you can imagine, this information could also fall into the hands of criminals. And it is concerning to know that your address or phone number are so easily accessible. It exposes us to a wide range of dangers, scams, identity theft, online harassment, or even stalking. Incogni is a service that contacts all these data brokers on your behalf automatically and requests them to remove you from all these lists. You could do it yourself in theory, but since there are so many of them, this would take you years and a lot of your precious time. So with a yearly subscription, Incogni constantly monitors all these data broker lists and will request your info to be deleted as soon as it pops up somewhere. You don't have to do anything, and your data will vanish step by step from all these data brokers. I've been using this service myself since a few weeks, and as you can see here, Incogni has already achieved to have me removed from 37 out of 46 data brokers where my data is listed. If you use the code below in the video description, you get an exclusive 60% off of an annual Incogni plan. A very generous deal if you ask me. 60% off, and you can just sit back and watch your personal info disappear from the internet. So then back to our statues. Here is a quite well preserved marble head of a woman dated from around 475 to 525 AD, found in Corinth. We can see that here too the facial features are stylized and simplistic compared to earlier statues. Here is a portrait head of a man, found in Aphrodisias, dated anywhere from the late 5th to the early 6th century AD. Many of the statues are missing their noses. Some were hewn off on purpose, but most lost them when they fell to the ground, as the nose sticks out the most. He sports the same mop hairstyle as in some of the previous statues. It seems to have been quite a fashion thing going on back then, or alternatively, it might have also been a standard artistic way in that time to portray male hair. And here is another male portrait head from Aphrodisias, also from around 500 AD plus minus. Again the same hairstyle, but this time with an additional stubble beard. Now here is one from Rome itself, found on the Palatine Hill, dated from around 500 to 550 AD. So this is from the era of the Ostrogothic kingdom. What a remarkable loss of craftsmanship as compared with the older statues. Probably most skilled artisans had fled Rome already a long time before. Here is one from 500 to 550 AD, but its initial finding location is unknown, and it has been heavily damaged, as you can see. It is fascinating that the far older statues of the earlier emperors and even from the Roman Republic are much better preserved than those younger ones. Most likely because there were more of the older ones, so you can find better preserved ones with a higher likelihood. And of course, the times in which they stood were more stable as well. Here is an interesting one from the early 500s AD, possibly showing the Gothic queen Amalasuntha, found in Rome. But it could also show another high-ranking woman. Here too, we should not expect to find statues from 500 AD or later with naturalistic features. The artisans from that period probably couldn't have created a statue of Marcus Aurelius of that same fidelity, even if they wanted to. This here could also be Amalasuntha, dated from 500 to 525 AD. But it could also be Ariadne, wife of the Eastern Roman emperors Zeno and Anastasius. And this here is most likely Empress Theodora, the wife of the Eastern Roman emperor Justinian. It was found in Mediolanum, modern-day Milan, and is thought to be from the mid-6th century. Of course, the features are stylized, but we get an interesting glimpse here as well how the elaborate hairdo and diadems and hair covers of high-ranking Roman women from that era looked. Fascinating. And here is Justinian's portrait head from sometime during his reign, which lasted from 527 to 565 AD. It was initially at Constantinople, but was looted during the sack of 1204 and can now be seen at the San Marco Cathedral in Venice. And here is another marble head of Justinian, and this one is actually quite remarkable. It is one of the very few ones with somewhat naturalistic features, with more detail, where we can actually imagine how Justinian might have looked like. This was certainly done by a skilled artisan who probably studied the old ways of how to craft elaborate marble statues or busts. And here are a few more. This one was found in Sardis and is from the early 500s. A portrait head of a woman with missing hair from the early 6th century. Another marble head of a woman from around 500 AD, found south of Rome. A head of Emperor Leo I or Anastasius from the late 400s or early 500s. A statue head of a woman with veiled hair from around 500 AD. Another woman portrait from anywhere between 400 to 600 AD. This is really one of the more elaborate ones, very rare for the time, with much more naturalistic features, very detailed, almost as if from earlier centuries of the Roman Empire. And here, if you ask me, a very ugly one from the mid-6th century, where the mouth part is missing. It has been found at Forum Livii and might represent the Gothic king Totila. Another remarkably ugly one from the 6th century found at the Hellespont. You thought uglier is not possible? Think again. Here is a female head from the 5th to 6th century. And this here might be one of the youngest, dating from possibly the 7th century, so anytime in the 600s. It is the surviving torso of a statue, but what we can see is an incredible decline in artistic fidelity, making even the previously shown statues look extremely detailed and well crafted in comparison. And that makes sense because the 7th century saw incredible disasters starting already as early as 602 when the Persian-Sasanian War started, and the Roman Empire would never fully recover from that. Skilled artisans either fled from the multi-decades of constant warfare, or they died trying to flee, and that ancient art form became more and more rare. There was less and less time to create statues in those chaotic and brutal times. And so the early to mid-600s AD are possibly the last time where statues were still made, but they most likely looked already far less sophisticated than even 100 years earlier. And those were already quite unsophisticated compared to the ones from the 1st or 2nd centuries AD. One of the last statues to be erected was a gilded equestrian statue on a column of Niketas, a military commander and cousin of Emperor Heraclius, which could be found in the Forum of Constantine at Constantinople, created sometime around 610 to 625 AD. It hasn't survived, but it was mentioned in a literary source. And so, less and less statues were created. And then at some point in the 7th century, this art form would stop completely and was entirely replaced by mosaics. And thus ended this more than 1,000-year-old tradition. You can find many more pictures of the last statues of late antiquity on the site Last Statues of Antiquity by the University of Oxford. I put the link into the video description. And please like and subscribe so that you won't miss any future videos on the fascinating era of the late Roman Empire. And please consider supporting this channel via Patreon or via a YouTube membership. I would be super thankful, and this would tremendously help to continue making videos about the fascinating era of the late Roman Empire. Thank you so much, friends of late Roman history. And I would of course like to thank everyone who is supporting Maiorianus in any form, be it through Patreon, YouTube membership, or through a PayPal donation. Thank you for supporting Maiorianus so that I can keep this a channel about late Roman history. And if you want to learn more about why statues became more simplistic in the late Roman Empire, you can watch this video here in the upper right corner. But if you want to learn more about the city of Constantinople, you can watch the other video in the lower right corner. I say thanks again to all friends of Roman history, gratias tibiago and bene valete.